What's going on, YouTube world? Mark here from TST Industries, back in the garage with another build series episode on our beautiful, completely stripped down Yamaha MT-03. Now, if you've been following this journey, I'm not going to repeat myself too much, but we are attempting to turn this into an XSR300. We want to kind of fill in that gap of Yamaha's XSR line, and we think that this is a perfect platform to do it, so here we are. Now we have the front of the bike stripped down. We have some loose cables here, which means one thing and one thing only. We are going to attempt to install a more retro-inspired scrambler style headlight like the ones found on the XSR 700 and 900. So here we are today. We did a bunch of research and we came across this company, SpeedMotoCo, based out of Oregon. We reached out to them. We went through their catalog and we found what we believe is going to be one of the best looking lights for our build for the direction we want to go in. We did get a 7-inch bucket with a matte black finish, which is going to go perfectly with the frame on this bike. We didn't want to get a gloss finish because nothing on this bike is going to be gloss outside of the fork tubes. So we're here today. We're going to install it, and I just want to do a quick rundown of this light. As you can see, I have already pre-assembled it. It does have an H4 bulb in it. We are going to change out the bulb for an LED light, for an LED bulb, I should say. But for now, that's just the stock bulb that comes with the light, like if you were to purchase it directly from SpeedMotoCo. So I'm just going to take apart this light real quick. Now, by default, these lights, or this one in particular, just comes with some bare wires. Now, for a lot of people, that's not a problem, especially if you're doing a custom build like this, where you may just have some, wires that you may have to splice in. But here at TST, and just being in the industry that we're in, we actually have the access to OEM style plugs. So I do just want to give that disclaimer. If you buy a light, an aftermarket light, whether from SpeedMotoCo or anyone else on the market, there is a chance that you're just going to have some bare wires, and that may require you to do some splicing, some soldering, whichever way you want to go about it. For us, like I said, we are actually able to pin these out with OEM style pins and OEM style connectors. Now, I do have the very last main headlight connector here. There's 4 positions on this, 3 wires in general that I have to connect. On the stock light, there's 4 wires in that 4 position plug. I'm going to get into that once we get into talking about connecting the light. But for now, I just want to show you what we're working with. Pretty basic headlight unit, some wires. We have a running light, we have the headlight and high beam, low beam situation here. So we are going to have to wire this up. The running light is already set up. We've done this, but we do need to talk about this as I just mentioned. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and just install this light, or attempt to. Now, when we got this light, we went ahead and did some test fitting, and we actually found that there is a bracket on this right here that you can see. This secures the dash and the windscreen, and we want to retain this, but we actually needed to modify it a bit. So we did take this to the angle grinder, we put it in the vise, we kind of grinded this away in a nice rounded edge right there, so it's going to sit nice and flush against the headlight. We're actually also going to install a little piece of foam just to create a little bit of tension and also protect against vibrations from both the headlight and this road vibrations, who knows. So we just don't want to damage this bucket. We don't want to damage this any more than we've already modified it, so we should be good. One other thing to note, if you plan on changing out the headlight on this bike, the forks are tapered. What does this mean? Well, they're 1 diameter up here up top, then they taper down to a larger diameter, and then they taper back down to a smaller diameter. If you're buying a headlight that mounts onto the fork tubes, you want to be aware, you want to be conscious when you're making that purchase. You may need 2 different size clamps, so just please keep that in mind. If you're getting a headlight that secures in another method, or if you plan on somehow reusing the OEM headlight mounting geometry, that may not be something you have to worry about. But if you're mounting onto the fork tubes, please be aware you may need 2 different sizes. Now I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this light, the front of the light onto the bucket, and then we're going to just go ahead and attempt to install it on the motorcycle. And it should be pretty straightforward. I don't think there's going to be too much questions here, but I do want to also mention that with removing our stock headlight and installing an aftermarket one, we are actually getting rid of our Mech GTR turn signals that you saw us install earlier in the build. So we need some turn signals, and we brainstormed here for a bit, and I think we came up with a solution, which is in the form of these one of one. These are the only lights in existence from TST that have our BL6 styling with sequential functions. Again, these are one of one. This is something that we went into our parts bin for our R&D department. We were trying to figure out lights that we thought would work, and we kind of decided on the BL6s early. We do just like the look of them. They're pretty streamlined, and when we installed them on the XSR line of bikes, they kind of matched really well. But we didn't want to do something that we already have, so like I said, we went through the R&D bin, and we found our one-of-one sequential BL6 signals. Now, these aren't something that ever got put into manufacturing. That does upset me because I wanted them for my MT-07, and a few other of my coworkers here wanted them for their bikes, but that doesn't mean this is something that's completely off the table. So if these are something that you want to see, you're willing to pull out your wallet for, leave a comment below, give us some feedback. Maybe we could push our product marketing and engineering team to actually develop these in a widespread manner and bring them to the market. But don't just jump the gun just yet. We do want to install them, show you the functions, and show you how bright they are on camera. So be sure to watch this video in full so you can see what they look like. I think I'm more excited about these signals than I am about the headlight, but that's neither here nor there. Now, pretty basic. We have the fork clamps here. They swing on this pivot here. We're actually going to remove this bolt. It's the same thread pitch as our BL6 signals. So what we're going to do is remove this bolt. We're actually going to thread this signal right into the headlight housing to secure this bracket to the headlight housing and lock the signals in. A one and done installation to secure us into the headlight and to get some signals on this unit. Other than that, I think we're just about ready to go. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on over to the bike. I do want to mention that these are CNC machine anodized clamps, and we are going onto the fork tubes. SpeedMotoCo thought of that ahead of time and actually includes these 3M adhesives, and they're actually pretty thick vinyl, and these are meant to sandwich in between the fork tubes and the clamps to prevent any scratching or damage to either the fork tubes or these clamps. So we're going to install those as well. And as you can see, these signals do have just bullet connectors on them. We want to change that. This is a product that we offer for various makes and models, but our plug and play harness converters, these actually have OEM style connections so that we don't have to hack up the wiring on here. We don't have to hack up the wiring on our OEM headlight that we ditched. We have a solution for a plug and play capability. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm tired of talking. I want to install this. I want to see what this headlight looks like, how this headlight looks on this bike. So let's get to it. So before we actually install it on the bike, obviously, we do want to go ahead and get our signals on. I already have one mounted, as you can see. So all we did was pull the provided bolt from SpeedMotoCo out, and it's the same exact thread pitch as our BL6 signals. So we have that one already mounted. What I'm going to do is show you how we did that on the opposite side. And here we are. And as you can see, we do have bullet connectors here. That is not an OEM connection, so we are going to end up using our harness converters that will plug into here and make that a plug and play connection. Before doing that, I do want to also install the BL6 signal on the left side. This is upside down, so on the left side of the headlight. So we're going to go ahead and grab our signal. We're going to remove this bolt. Now there's some hardware on here. It's all going to fall off. Might make some noise. No need to worry. All right. And then here is the hardware that is included. So we have a rubber washer. We have a stainless steel anodized black washer. And we have a shoulder washer and the bolt. This bolt is getting ditched in favor of this. So what I'm actually going to do is feed these bullet connectors through the shoulder washer. Bullet connectors and shoulder washer through this bracket. There we go. And then we are going to take the rubber washer and the other stainless steel one, slide them both over. Whoop. Voila, there we are. Now we can feed the bullet connectors through the headlight bucket. or the headlight housing, whatever you want to call it. There we are. Line it all up and start threading our signal in. Now it's going to thread in. There isn't a nut. There's a captive nut on the inside of this bucket. I'm not sure how well you can see that with the lighting. You might be able to see it on this side. There's a captive nut on that headlight housing that will keep that in place. And I think that's good right there. If you want to, you can apply a small amount of Loctite. We're not going to do that. But once it's on, we're actually going to perfect the angle of these signals. Make sure that they're sitting exactly how we want them once they're on the bike. But here we are. Now what we're going to do is take our harness converters, 3 wires on the harness converter, but only 2 on these signals. I know the wiring diagram pretty well because I've been doing this for a while. Most modern Yamahas use the same connection method, and for our signals into our harness converters, again, this is only for our products, it is going to be red to black, yellow to brown, and this blue wire is going to be left out as this is the running light circuit and we do not have running lights on these signals. So again, red to black, brown to yellow, blue is going to get taped off. We do also have these rubber insulating sleeves on these harness converters. Once we connect them into the BL6 signals, we're going to slip these rubber sleeves over the connectors to prevent them from touching each other or any metal components and shorting out. But then we're also going to take an additional step and cover them with some electrical tape. So that is one connection down. As you can see, we taped off the blue one, secured these 2 in place. Normally I would use heat shrink, but because we're honestly just testing all of this, I want to just use electrical tape. In case we have to tear this off, it'll be pretty easy. And I'm not going to be doing too much work here. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same for the opposite side, and then we'll get to it. All right, so here we are. We're all ready with these signals. We do want to finish wiring up our actual headlight unit for these 3 connectors, these 3 pins into the OEM style connector. So let's go ahead and jump to that. So I do just want to show, we do have an OEM style connection here. This is for the running lights. Now you may be confused what's a running light versus a low beam. The running light on the MT-03 in particular is just those little accent lights on top, those little eyebrow features, the LED strips. Those are pretty slick. I'm going to show you that we do have that function here. That turns on. During testing, we did find that Yamaha on the MT-03, very similar to the R1 and the new R6, or the new R1 and the new R6, I should say. They have a light control unit on their OEM headlights. Now that light control unit, the LCU, is very similar to an ECU, in which it controls the functionality of the high beam and low beam transition. Now, we couldn't retrofit that light control unit into this housing. So what does that mean? We won't have a functioning high beam switch. Now, that's not too much of an issue because we know that just in dealing with motorcycles, we know that the high beam and low beam circuit is just a dummy circuit. It's either on or it's off. So what we're going to do is we do have a wiring schematic for the MT-03. We're actually just going to hardwire it. We're going to get into the harness and hardwire directly into this light so that when we activate our switch or hit this pass button, we do get a high beam functionality. I also want to mention that we are going to change out the actual lights in this unit. So this rubber sleeve comes off, this connection comes off, and you can actually remove the light bulb that's inside here. We're going to swap that out for an LED because we do, although we want to go with the retro inspired look, we do want to bring it to the 21st century. So we are going to swap this out for an LED light. So just a few things to note as we're doing this. If anyone in the world is interested in doing this on their MT-03, we're trying to give you as many disclaimers as possible before you jump in blindfolded. So what we're going to do is we have our 3 wires here. We have a 4-pin connector here. This is the OEM connection, and as you can see, I'm going to insert this. It pops right in. So we're going to go ahead and wire in our lights, and these are pretty simple. Like with any electrical connector into, or any electrical pin going into an electrical connector, you will hear a very audible snap. That is the locking tab on the pin and the connector engaging with each other to make sure that you cannot pull this or vibrate this wire out. Next, we're going to do that one, and there we go. And we do have our rubber insulators here. We also have them on this connector as well. This is to prevent any sort of corrosion, electrical corrosion, or any water or moisture building up inside there causing a short or anything like that. We're on the very last steps here. We have to reassemble this light into the headlight housing or the headlight bucket, and then we're actually going to mount it onto the bike, onto the fork tubes. So let's go ahead and jump right to that. So here we are in the final step of this headlight retrofit job we're doing here on our 2020 Yamaha MT-03. Before I jump in and hopefully put these clamps onto the fork tubes and secure the light to the bike, just going to do a quick rundown. We removed the OEM headlight, check. With the headlight, our turn signals went as well, check. We did have to modify this sub brace here, which holds the gauge cluster to the bike. We did have to modify that and round it off to accommodate for the round style retro headlight that we have. That is complete. We also went ahead and installed our OEM-like connections onto our new headlight. We retained all of the OEM connections on the bike side harness, and we also retained the OEM connections on our OEM headlight and turn signals. So we don't have to worry about those if we ever want to reinstall it or sell it off. We have everything is plug and play still. And the only left connection is for the actual gauge cluster, which will come when we install the gauge onto the bike. So without further ado, let's go ahead. This is going to be the first time I actually mount this with everything finalized onto the bike. I haven't test fit it since I cut this out. So let's keep our fingers crossed and just dive right in. We do have our clamp bolts here. And first things first, we are going to try and line this up as best as possible. I'm going to open up these clamps on both the top and bottom. Now I do want to note, although we did cut that bracket and we did use some sandpaper to smooth it out, I do still want to apply a small layer of foam or something. I mentioned it earlier. I do want to apply a small layer of foam or maybe some electrical tape on the headlight or the bracket to reduce any potential damages from road vibrations, because this is a pretty small thumpy bike. It does make a lot of vibration just from the motor, and riding on the road obviously is going to create a little bit more. But I think we're good here. I think I feel pretty good in what we did. The clamps fit perfectly. One of the very last steps, we do have to connect everything. So hopefully this is just as painless. We have, and obviously all of these cables and such are going to get routed properly. But for now, let's make sure everything functions. Let's see if I can get a first try Fridays here. See if I can connect the turn signals right on the first try. Get the left with the left and the right with the right. Looks pretty good. I will want to adjust these clamps maybe slightly, get the angle a little bit better. I'm gonna make some final adjustments once we're at that spot, but we have a headlight, we have running lights. Now, you can see here, this is an issue with the turn signals. What's happening is we did switch to LEDs up front and we did switch to LEDs in the rear. The current draw is slightly different. So the signals are actually not flashing at the correct rate, and we do need to change that. So what I'm gonna do now is actually install our tail light just to add in some additional current. And then we'll be able to show you the true look of the one and only BL6 sequential turn signals from TST Industries that are on this planet currently. And again, if you like these, leave a comment in the comment field. Please give us your feedback on these signals, because personally, I really love them. I want them on my bike. I mentioned it earlier. I was not kidding. This is not a sales pitch. This is mainly just me being selfish and wanting these turn signals for myself. So let's go ahead and see if we fix this. And voila. We have a sequential style signal. Obviously, we did lose the hazard function when we switched out our throttle tube housing earlier in this build series. Make sure you check out that video if you might have missed that, wondering why we don't have hazard switch or hazard signals. But everything is functioning properly. This is awesome. I'm super excited. I'm pretty happy with the end look. I'm gonna take a few steps back here and actually get a really nice look from further back. I think this is a winner, guys. We do have to tweak the angles of the clamps a little bit better, make sure that everything's sitting properly, but I think this is it. So this is all for today's episode. We're gonna make some final tweaks here, install the foam in between the headlight and the bracket, make some final adjustments to these fork brackets to make sure that the headlight is sitting at the correct angle. But I'm very happy. I'm very curious about your feedback and your thoughts on what we've done here and the overall look so far. Again, this bike isn't going to be unveiled in its entirety until the very last episode. So next up, we are sending our gas tank out to get fiberglassed. We're gonna fill in some of these gaps on the side, make it really nice and straight, smooth, rolled lines. We're gonna fill in some of these like little gusset features that are up on here. And after that, it'll be sent off to paint. So we'll show you the gas tank once it's fiberglass. We will not show it to you painted until the very last episode, the grand unveiling of what we believe is going to be our XSR300. After that, we also have to fill in our side panels here in the front and the sides. And then we'll get into some heavy cutting on the back, cutting the subframe, modifying that, and coming up with a taillight system for that end of the build. We also need to reinstall our OEM windscreen and the gauge cluster, so that's something we need to do. I'm very happy with where we got today. This build is starting to really come to life. I'm starting to see the vision that we originally had, and I'm getting really excited, guys. I hope you are too. Be sure to like, subscribe, turn those notifications on if you haven't already. Leave your comments, questions, concerns in the comment field below. And as always, this is Mark, TST. Catch you guys next time. Ride safe.